Welcome to the Stuff About Money podcast. I am Erik, your co-host, and I will be joined by Dr. Matt Morris. You know me as the financial planner and Matt as a family therapist, but we're also entrepreneurs and business owners who face the pressure, the burnout, and the uncertainty that comes with chasing big goals. We work with high performers, executives, business owners, and professionals alike who are trying to succeed without losing their health, their relationships, or their sense of direction in the process. That kind of life takes intention, clear boundaries, and a mindset built for growth. In this series, we discuss the habits, the frameworks, the hard-won lessons that we've picked up along the way, and we continue to live out. Through candid conversations and practical tools, we'll tackle the real challenges driven people face when they want to grow without burning out. Let's rethink success together. All right, Dr. Matt, in the last episode, we talked about the myth of work-life balance. At least I refer to it as a myth. So if y'all didn't hear it, go back and listen to it. That was a really good conversation that we had. But in this episode, we're going to talk about the importance of high-income earners and entrepreneurs, the importance of them optimizing their workload. And what we mean by that is not necessarily working harder, but working smarter. So lead us off.
Yeah, most of us have plenty to do and an endless to-do list. And so we don't have the capacity to always just work harder. We need to optimize. We need to work smarter. We need to work better and to use technology to our advantage. And so let's just talk about that, how all of us can hopefully scrape back a little time and energy, two resources that always seem to slip through our fingers, and talk about how we can be more efficient with both so that we can spend our time and energy doing the things that we really want to do outside of work.
Yeah, interesting. Time and energy. We all have the same amount of time, right? None of us have more or less time than the other. Energy is another story. We can argue that some of us have more energy. There's some who are just built different. We're going to actually talk about that in another episode. About energy, but time, right? We all have 24 hours. None of us has more. None of us has less.
Yeah.
It is equal, distributed equally amongst us all.
Yeah. And so, we have to acknowledge that time is finite, and it escapes us all the time. And so we have to be able to work that's smarter. And in no way, Erik, are we talking about today that you have to work perfectly or that you have to be supremely optimized or supremely efficient or anything like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about improving efficiencies.
But if you think about it, yeah, I often talk about in the context of money that we have to be better stewards, right? This idea of stewardship, like caretakers of the resources that we have financially. And I think what you're talking about here is we have to be good caretakers of the time that we have. We have to be prudent and judicious how we spend our time and what we spend our time on is what it sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, that probably you could be spending your time on things that will impact your work and your business more dynamically, and you can probably offload some things that are, for lack of a better term, not the best use of your time, potentially a waste of your time.
Yeah. I was having a conversation, this was probably 2 or 3 years ago. It was more, I was complaining. I was lamenting to a friend of mine who's a fellow business owner in a similar industry. And I was telling him how frustrated I was with a staff member. Like, this is just not getting done. I need to do it myself. And he's like, why do you need to do it yourself?
Yeah.
I'm like, because I'm going to do it right. And he goes, what does it mean for you to do it right? I said, I'm going to do it this way. And he goes, well, how are they going to do it? And I don't know what I said, but what he told me it resonates with me. It's like when you told me, I think I talked about in the last podcast, right? You just make bad goals, continues to resonate. This is something that echoes in my mind. He said, are they going to get it done? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, is it going to be done good enough? I'm like, yeah. Is it going to be done the way you would do it? No. He goes, then what does it matter? It's going to get done. And like, man, I'm like, he's so right. Just like I had this idea that I have to do it. It falls on me to do it because I'm going to do it right. But the reality is there's too much for me to do.
Right. Right. I mean, perfect segue to one of the big workload mistakes that leaders and productive people often make is in thinking that they're the one that can do it right,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore they're the one that has to do it. You can think about this as like a Superman syndrome, is
Yeah.
that you think you're the man of steel, you think you can do it, and you can do it better than other people, which sometimes is true. But because you have limited time and energy, if you do that thing, you can't do other things.
Yeah. But again, you might do it better, but does it need to be done better? It needs
Right.
to be done.
It needs to be done.
It needs to be done.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so leaders really have to be discriminatory around what they're going to do, that they have to do, that it requires their attention, their participation, and those things that they could do, but somebody else could do also.
Yeah. I guess it goes to we always say, well, that's just above my pay grade. Or we kind of say that jokingly, but like there literally is like things that only I can do. I
Yeah.
can't, no one else can do it. I have to do it. So therefore I have to be, like you to use your word, judicious and not do the things that somebody else can do. I need to offload those.
And we'll be talking about delegation in a minute. But first is just the mindset
Yeah.
of I'm not the only participant in this organization. There's other people that could do that.
Is that an arrogant thought for me to, or egotistical? Like, is that ego for me to say, like, I can only do this? Is that something that if someone has that thought, I'm not calling them arrogant or egotistical, but is that something uh, that lends itself to that?
Right. There is some egotism in that, is that I'm the only one that can do that. And that's why some leaders, that's why they're doing it, is because they are sort of egotistical. But that also goes along with productive people and entrepreneurs, is that they are high achievers. And so it's no wonder that they
Yeah.
come to that conclusion. But often people are doing it themselves because they don't know how to give it away.
Mm.
They don't, and they don't, it's
Ooh.
hard for them to accept that someone else could do it, even if it's not done to their specifications. It's like,
So you're saying it's a skill. That's a skill that I can learn and how to hand something off better.
definitely, yeah. We'll talk about delegation more
Yeah.
in just a moment, but um,
I'm just trying to jump the gun on you, huh, man?
yeah, let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk about our second uh, workload mistake.
Mhm.
Second workload mistake: reactionary work versus proactive work. So
Yeah.
doing what needs to be done today versus chasing around and putting out the fires for today. Are you always putting out fires? Then you probably don't have the systems or the people in place to be proactive in your work.
Yeah. I would say there are some industries that by nature are reactive.
Mm,
That there's some things that you just can't help, like particularly in some service industries, like you're reacting to requests that come in.
yeah.
So being able to figure out what can I do proactively so that I don't have to react? Is there things that we can do preemptively with clients to prevent requests, right? Where we can initiate the work as opposed to just waiting for it to be directed or dictated to us.
Thirdly, there's the workload mistake of the inability, or um, maybe it's just an undisciplined way of working in which we're not prioritizing our task appropriately. We're spending time on lower priority items and not spending our time and energy on higher priority items. So we're just not prioritizing correctly.
Yeah, one of the first coaches I ever worked with, something that I took away and I still think about today. He had me make a list of what he called revenue generating activities and revenue generating activities, right? You had to do these things to make money, and then non-revenue generating activities, and then time wasters. So like there's a recognition that there are some things that are some tasks that need to be done that don't directly generate revenue.
Right.
There's tasks that need to be done that generate revenue, and there's things you do it's just a waste of your time. And being able to distinguish between the three was an important exercise for
And to
me
be
early
able
on.
to prioritize that today. What am I
Hmm.
needing to do this week
Right
or even
now, yeah,
today, right now? Yeah.
yeah,
Well, let's jump forward into now delegation. And delegation is a skill, and so it's one of those things like I use my golf swing, in the last couple of episodes. But let's talk about a tennis swing now.
okay.
Okay. So delegation is like that you can probably delegate. You can probably hit a tennis ball, but you can get better at it with practice also.
Okay.
You can get some coaching, you can refine steps, and you can break it down into micro processes and get better at it. But a lot of people struggle with delegation. They it's not natural to them. They don't really know how to do it. They get sort of hung up in some details. If it doesn't go right one time, then they're reluctant to do it again. It takes time to delegate, and so often leaders will just say like, "I'd just rather do it myself."
Hmm.
But that's not scalable, and so it's in that way it continues to be an unoptimized practice. You got to learn to delegate.
I had an employee once, and they were kind of in like a training. There wasn't much structure to the organization a long time ago, right? When I was learning all this.
Mhm.
But this individual had some training roles, I would say some management roles. So whenever we hired a new person, I mean, this person had like just a ton of knowledge, right? They understood the business, and they could do an air quotes here, teach that to someone else. The problem was they were not a very patient or a great teacher. And it got to a point where if you made a mistake,
Mm,
that person would just go behind you and fix it. And I told this person, I said, you have ruined a lot of potential really good employees
yeah,
because they never learn how to do it. And then
yeah,
and then you're going to complain that you can't delegate to them because they don't know how to do it, but you never actually taught them how to do it because you just did it for them.
yeah. I have a long list of tips, so let me dig into
Oh
these.
yeah?
We'll come back to that example. That's a good
Okay.
example. Okay. So for if you're working on your delegation skills and muscles, here are several tips to think through. Number one, start small. Delegate something that's not mission critical. Just start with something smaller. As a young professor, I'm a professor, and professors often have TAs or GAs. As a younger professor, I didn't really know how to delegate tasks to those people. And often I would delegate tasks that were beyond their competence, beyond their
Mm,
ability. I might say something like, "Hey, I have a lecture next week to deliver. Can you write me an outline?" No, they can't do that. They don't know the content. They don't know the information. They don't know what I really want to say, what I've already said. It's it's an important task creating an outline for a lecture I'm about to give, but it's beyond their capability. That's not what I needed to have them do. I
yeah.
could have them email students for me. I could have them check on various students for me, or make copies even, or other kind of tasks that aren't mission critical.
Yeah.
Just start small, delegating.
And that could be if you think of like the three types of tasks that I laid out, revenue generating, non-revenue generating, then time wasters, like maybe you start with some of those non-revenue generating tasks, right?
Yeah,
Like I need run to the post office for me. Can you fax this for me? Fax. Someone asked me to fax something to them the other day. I'm like, what? I don't even know what that means.
bring back
Uh,
the facts.
yeah, but I like that. Start small.
Start small.
Mhm.
And I like your point about maybe pick a non-revenue generating task that's important and it has to be done, but it's not critical and someone can learn on it.
I think let me take a step back. I think this assumes something that you as a leader has taken the time to inventory everything
Hmm.
that you do. So like if you haven't done that, I remember when I was building processes for our business, and I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But when I was building processes, I gave every one of my staff a pad of paper, yeah, real paper and pen, not a Word document, but paper and pen. And I said, every time you do something new, write it down, write the task down, like not like the specifics of the task, but what is the task?
Yeah.
right? And then every time you do it again, just put like a little mark by it and just literally collected all the tasks that we do on a regular basis. And you find you
Or,
start to repeat a lot of tasks. So you
mhm.
start to find something like, okay, wait a minute. We spend X amount of time doing this task. Maybe I should start teaching that task to somebody or delegating that task. So you as the leader, before you even start small, man, make an inventory of everything that you're doing and the frequency that you do these things.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you had people not only note down what they did, but then tally up or put a tick mark next to each
Yeah.
time they did it. So you knew the frequency of tasks.
Yeah.
All right. Tip two, use the 70% rule. You'll like this. The 70% rule is if someone can do it 70% as well as you, let them delegate it.
So vague. 70%. How do I measure that, Matt?
Yeah, I don't know that you can measure it, but
Yeah.
the whole idea is they don't have to do it as well as you,
Yeah.
and we're not shooting for perfection here. We're shooting for completion,
Yeah.
good enough, and we can build that into scalability. So if someone can do it, that's a good task to turn over.
Yeah. And let me take a second here just to define a word, just so that we're on the same page. Scalability. This idea of scale is that you can repeat something
Mm.
without
Mhm.
without necessarily putting in the same amount of effort every time. So for me to do something once takes, let's say, X amount of effort. To do something twice doesn't necessarily take two times X, right? It's X and a little bit more, and so on and so forth. So the more scale, the more repeatable something is, um, the more efficient and effective you can be.
Right, right. So here, all that we're saying with the 70% rule is that uh, you can turn things over, and it won't be done exactly to your standards necessarily. But we're going to look at some other follow up ideas in a minute. But it'll get done,
Hmm.
and that will free you up to do some other things that may be more mission critical. All right. Third, empower the person you delegate to with clear guidelines. Give them really clear expectations about what you're expecting the outcome to be or the product to be or possibly maybe even the process, but allow them autonomy in how they carry that out. Really try to show them what you would like it to look like at the end or the product to be, what the expectation is in the end, but try not to micromanage the whole process. They might do it differently than you, and that can be okay.
And there's a lot in this one. And first, I think expectation is so important. As a leader, if you're delegating someone and you haven't given them a clear, I do this often, and I actually admit to it. So I'll delegate something to somebody, and I'll say, I'm not giving you very many directions, and I'm giving you permission to like do it how you think it needs to be done. Right? Like I'll give them the freedom, like okay, whew, right?
I like
Or
that you even say that.
yeah, like I recognize the fact that like I'm asking you to do something,
Mhm.
and I feel that you. And typically, if I'm asking them to do something, I feel like they've developed the skill set, the competency, right, to be able to deliver something similar to what I want. But I'm super graceful if it comes back to me totally wrong. But I think giving a clear guideline, and this is I'm going to go back to talking about processes and building processes. There's nothing more clear than having a process. This is how we do this task.
Mhm.
This is that we start here and we end here, and along the way we stop here and document this and do this. Now within those checkpoints along the way of doing a process, you can put your own spin on it, your own personality on it. But processes are the clearest way and the best way to delegate something because there's no questions along the way. Like, what did Matt mean by this? What's in the
Yeah.
process? And when you have good processes, um, you have to do less managing of people because the process help in managing people,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. It's there's guidance on how to do that thing already. And
Yeah,
that guidance provides management.
that's right. And that's the expectation. Here's do I need you to create for me an outline? Okay. or for a class. Let's say that's the task. Go create for me an
Mhm.
outline for this class. Well, how does Matt create his outlines? Well, here's exactly how he does it. Here's how he comes up with a topic. Here's how he likes it to be outlined. Here's the points that he likes to make. He likes to have 3 points, and within each 3 points, he likes to have three more points. Boy, that's a
Mhm.
lot of clarity, right? It might sound like micromanaging, but I think it's being clear
Right.
in your expectation.
Yeah, my students hate the most when I give them open-ended assignment. When I say, come up with a final project, they
Yeah.
hate that. They have no idea what that could mean.
Yeah.
And
Could you come
once,
speak? Could you come speak to this group? I'm like, sure. What do you want me to speak about? Whatever you want.
whatever you want.
Like,
Yeah.
whatever? Like, tell me exactly. That's right.
Yeah. So empower your the person you're delegating to. Would you call that a delegate? Empower the person you're delegating to
Yeah.
with clear guidelines.
It's
And
good.
that takes a few minutes, but it will pay dividends in their productivity.
Well, look, let's be clear. Um, Anytime you delegate something to a staff member or to a team member, there is a fair amount of intentionality and purpose that has to go into you actually delegating it. This is where the problem occurs, where you think that, oh, I can just give you something and expect you to give me the product that I want, but never resource you. That was a hard lesson for me as a leader, as a business owner. Is man, I am asking people, I'm expecting things from them, and I have never resourced them properly to deliver what I expect from them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it does that takes time to be able to empower them in that way. All right, fourth tip here is be aware of and catalog the strengths of your team
Hmm.
so that you can delegate to the right person and really um, utilize their abilities, their strengths, their goals. Figure out what people are good at so that you can give the task to the right person.
Yeah, there's the book Good to Great. I think that's Jim Collins. Jim Collins maybe Good to Great. And he popularized this idea of like making sure you have the right people on the bus, right? The bus is the business. Make sure
That's
you have
right.
the right employees.
Mhm.
And then
In the right seats, right?
yeah, but he didn't talk about I don't think he talked about the right seat. I think that might have been from the book Traction, where it talks about it's not just important to have the right people on the bus, it's to have the right people in the right seat on the bus. And that's what you're talking about is recognizing people's strengths. I've got some staff members that are really good at like tasks. You give them a list of tasks, man, and they will pour through it relentlessly and get them all off. Check them off the list. I've got some other staff member that are super creative, and
Mm-hmm.
if I need to think through something, they're the ones I go to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give them a list of tasks. I mean, they could get it done, but they're not going to pour through it like some other staff.
Yeah.
Right. So it's recognizing what people are strong at and what they're not strong at and leveraging those strengths.
Yeah, that's great. And so moving on, our fifth point here is once you've delegated, check in on the person, but try not to micromanage again. Try not to just oversee the process. Step in and go, hey, how's it going? Any questions? Step out.
Yeah.
But it can be really useful as you're delegating and particularly learning to delegate or delegating to a new person to hop in sooner than later to just answer any follow-up questions.
Yeah.
A person might have a good idea of what you're looking for, but not quite. So now they're kind of wandering around in their own darkness. Shine a light, clarify a little bit.
Yeah. I've got two things to say on this. Depending on the tasks and depending on the level of complexity of the task, I'm always a big fan of inviting that person to do the task with you. Like I'm doing it, I'm teaching you, you're watching me do it. Okay. The next time we have to do the task, I'm going to let you do it, but I'm going to watch you. We're just going to flip roles. So now I'm sitting next to you. Okay. So you watch me do it. I watch you do it. And then I'm going to come in and check on you the next few times you do it a little bit more closely. And then I can back off as you prove or show that you can do it,
Mhm.
that you can do it well. I think I said two things and that was one thing. And I don't remember what the second thing was.
That's okay. That's
So we'll
okay.
just
Well,
keep, we'll just keep going through.
where are we at? Fifth, sixth.
Yeah.
Sixth tip is, and you do this well, use technology. Find a project management tool or a piece of software that helps you track what you've assigned and what's coming back to you. Different people do this in different way. I'm working on a project right now with a couple of other people. We use a Google Doc.
Mhm.
It's just but it's something. It's
So
something,
archaic, Matt.
right? It's something to keep track of what we said we were going to do, and then to check on it. Now, in defense of my archaic Google Doc, one of the people showed me how to add I don't even know what they're called, like a bulleted list with tick boxes or check boxes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
So
recently learned this in Google Docs. So it just makes the assigning of a task and the acknowledging that it's been completed easier.
I was talking to an entrepreneur recently. He's a tech entrepreneur of all things, and we're having lunch. And I was explaining to him this how I'm managing projects. Got a lot of different projects. I'm trying to manage it. So I'm like, yeah. So I built this spreadsheet. It's just got a bunch of columns. And like he looked at me. It was the most judgmental look. And I'm like, what? He goes, "You're using a spreadsheet?" I'm
Spreadsheet.
like, yeah. He's like, oh my gosh. Like I'm like, is there something wrong with that? He's like, there's so much better ways to do it. I'm like, it's working.
Right.
It's working. Let me say this about technology. And this is a shift that I had in mindset probably about 3 years ago. I find myself adopting a lot of different technologies to try to help me do tasks. And what ended up happening was my life just got more complicated. I
Yes.
was spending a lot of money on technology. I wasn't using it to its fullest.
Yes.
And it forced me to sit down and write what I'm calling a technology policy statement. So it's a statement that guides my adoption and my continued use of certain pieces of technology.
Okay.
And I started looking at technology as like another staff member. That
Hmm.
when you onboard a new staff member, what do? You orient them, you train them, you teach them. It's the same thing with technology. When I onboard new technology, it's meant to help me be more efficient. I need to adapt it, customize it to my practice, right? So I
Right.
need to spend the time with it, how whatever that looks like, spend the time, whatever the software um, is and the demands that it has to make sure that you incorporate it properly into your practice, into your business. Otherwise, you're not going to be using it to its you're not going to be using it as effectively as you can.
And so it does take time to use technology, particularly in the use of new technology. So if you're going to purchase something or subscribe to something to help you manage tasks, you're probably going to have to spend a week learning how to use it well,
Or more. Yeah.
and then or more, and then
Yeah.
getting other people to use it well and training people to use it well. So it is a front loaded time commitment to help you use your time more efficiently later.
Let me use this moment to give a warning. And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I use technology and I try to implement it in my business and I got pushback. Most people, that's a general statement. A lot of people might not like change, right? When you bring in new technology, sometimes it's hard. It changes your process. It changes your workflow. It's something new to learn. You will get pushback. So when you introduce something, especially if it's going to change your workflow, you better know it fairly well and be super confident in what it's going to do for you and be able to display that um, to your staff that you want to get buy-in on. And oftentimes, if you can start to get buy-in early on, is that's a good thing by talking about the benefit that the software will provide or the technology will provide, and then say, oh, we have a solution that can actually deliver that. Isn't that great? But then there's that learning curve.
Right. So, okay, so we're talking about delegation, and sometimes it's not sometimes, often it's really useful to use technology to
Mhm.
track delegation. But what we've been talking about over the last few minutes is that using technology has its own time cost initially. It's well worth it. I think you
Yeah.
want to find a tool that works for you, whether it's a Google Doc or Monday.com. You want to find a tool that works for you, that accomplishes what you need to accomplish, and not a whole lot more. All
Yeah.
right, let's keep going.
Let's go.
When you delegate to someone, try to get in the habit of providing them with constructive feedback on how they did. So you
Yeah.
gave them the task, they did what they could do, and now try to share with them what you appreciated about it, and if there is anything, how else they could have done it a little bit differently or a little bit better or a little bit more in line with the expectation.
Mm.
Provide feedback.
I have a mentor, and he told me, he says, if you haven't told or taught somebody something 7 times, I don't know, seven, I don't know if that's maybe some arbitrary number that he picked, but if you haven't taught somebody something 7 times, you haven't taught them once. And I think his point was, don't expect someone to do something the way that you want it done after just teaching them one time. It's going to take
Yeah,
multiple times.
right. And so when you're delegating, particularly with new people or new tasks, you're going to have to revisit the task several times with them because there's nuances in it, there's details in it that you know that they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But in your story, I think it was a staff member of yours was delegating something and then people wouldn't quite do it quite right, and then the staff member would come
Yeah,
behind them, go after them and do it, fix it. That's one way to do it, but it's ultimately inefficient.
totally inefficient.
Yeah.
Cost me a lot of
And
money.
our to our last point in delegation, it doesn't create that workplace culture of trust. We need that trust. If you're going to delegate to people, they need to feel that you trust them, and you need to feel that they're going to get it done.
Yeah.
And so feedback and refinement create this workplace trust where it's like, I know you can do that.
Yeah. And I would say, kind of go back to an earlier point. Um, if you think of like old school apprenticeships, right? Like you're a blacksmith and you're gonna hire me to come blacksmith with you. I'm gonna be an apprentice of yours for a season. And I'm gonna learn standing next to you. I'm gonna watch you do the work. I'm gonna
Mhm.
watch you labor and I'm gonna learn alongside of you. I think all too often in business these days, we're so worried about bottom line. We're so worried about turning a profit, which is obviously important. We're so worried about like my return on investment when I hire someone. We forget this idea of like apprenticeship, that it is
Mhm.
worth maybe slowing the process down of bringing somebody on or onboarding someone so that they learn how to do it right. That it might, I could slow it down and take 3 months to onboard someone. That will cost me far less than not teaching someone to do it right and finding out a year later.
Yeah, right.
That's a hard mindset. That's hard because it costs money. There's a hard cost to that. Like if I hire someone, I'm paying them a salary, then okay, I can live with that. But if I hire someone, I'm paying them a salary and it's taking up a lot of my time to teach them and I'm not getting anything from them, there's a soft cut like, man, I can't do that. That's too hard. And we get lazy about it. But if we're intentional and we train them properly in the front end, then man, we can delegate like like a champ when they know how to
Right.
do it right.
Delegation is hard. And so, yeah, again, it's one of those things like a tennis swing that you can probably do, but you can probably get better at also with some coaching and some practice. All right, let's move on to some ways in which executives and entrepreneurs can think about prioritizing their work. Some various mental models
Okay.
that people have found helpful over the years. The first one I want to bring up, I don't know what you call it, but sometimes it's called the Eisenhower matrix.
Okay.
It's
That's
really
the important and urgent.
That's right.
Okay.
Really trying to sort tasks into things that are both important and urgent. Okay. So you end up with a matrix of four different boxes here. We can probably link to a graphic or something, but you end up with box number one that's important and urgent. You end up with box number two that is urgent but not important. And then you end up with box number three that is important but not urgent. And then you end up with box four, which is not important and not urgent.
Where do I want to be, Matt?
Well, you have all of those things in your life. What you want to
Yeah.
be able to do is to sort the task for your day or week into those boxes so you know what to focus on. So obviously you want to be able to spend most of your time on things that are urgent and important. In fact, you might have to set something aside and for today focus on something that is more urgent and important today.
Mhm. But I don't ever want something to become urgent. I guess this goes back to proactive versus reactive. There's some things that we have to react to, that they are urgent, they're important. We got to get them done before things. I would rather spend, and I don't know, like I'm familiar with the Eisenhower matrix. I don't know like how it's taught, like where you want to spend most of your time, but like I personally would rather spend my time on important things. I don't want the urgency of it's got to get done now, like that.
Yeah,
I got to put a fire out. Like I just want to spend time on important things.
that's great. Yeah, I mean, important but not urgent things should be scheduled on your calendar. So they should be
Okay.
things that are become routine for you in a
Okay.
way that you know that that's important. You know you need to address it, and it's coming up. Like recording this podcast,
Yeah.
it's not urgent, but it's important. So we schedule it. We set aside a time for it.
So that's my ideal. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make that clear. Confession time. That's my ideal, to work on important things. Certainly urgent things come up and I have to take care of them. So important versus urgent. I think a lot of business owners probably have come across that in different ways. But what's another framework?
Let me hit
Oh,
box three real
box
quick.
three.
Urgent but not important.
Okay.
Those are things. Those are tasks that you can delegate pretty safely.
Okay. That's good. So I'm
And
gonna.
then not important and not urgent are things you should probably just steer clear of.
It's like scrolling through Facebook during the
Right,
day.
right.
Yeah.
Or you know, I do like to check to see how the Pelicans did the night before if they played.
They probably lost. I'll save you
It's a
time.
rough year. Um, but that's a fun activity for me,
Yeah.
but it's not an important or urgent.
Yeah.
The news is still going to be there later when I want to check,
Will be.
but it's not important or urgent.
It's like watching
It's
Chelsea, like
interesting.
watching a Chelsea soccer game. It's neither important. Well, it could be important.
Mm. Now,
Now,
hey,
let me
yeah,
let me say this, and this is something. As an entrepreneur or a high income earner, depending on the constraints of your role. Oftentimes, if we play our cards right, we're in a position to choose to do the things that we want to do, the things that give us life. There's things in my business that I do that I could probably delegate, but man, I really enjoy them and I
sure.
want to do them. I don't want to delegate them. And if I delegate them, I feel like a little piece of me is dying just because I like to do it. And I understand that. So I think it's important
Mhm.
to understand too, like we show up to work. The point of work isn't necessarily just to drive as much revenue as possible. If you're in that position, and sometimes you work for someone, I get it, and you're constrained by your your employment relationship. But like sometimes as business owners, if you're in a position to control your day, and hopefully you can get to that point, man, do things that give you life. So long as, and by life I mean like charge you up, you feel good, you feel happy,
Right,
they're
right.
exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I think we could probably spend more time on that. Let me jump to the next thing, and maybe
Yeah.
we'll pick it up in here. But um, another mental model or framework is known as the 80-20 rule or Pareto principle.
Hmm.
Um, really being able to deduce in your own work what activity creates the most amount of bang for your buck. So the idea in the 80-20 principle is that 20% of your effort is responsible for 80% of the outcome or the product or the revenue, even at times, and really trying to figure out what are those levers that when you pull them actually make a difference.
Mm. As you were saying that, I was thinking the phrase where you hear people say that the squeeze isn't worth the juice.
Yeah,
So like
yeah,
that's like it's probably something you shouldn't be doing, right? Because you're just not going to get enough productivity from the input. I'm not enough.
right,
Yeah.
right. It's like when you and I were at one point in our life trying to create a fundraiser for an organization. And somebody threw out the idea of why don't y'all have a bake sale? And I thought, Bake sales are a lot of work actually
Yeah.
for not much money.
Yeah.
It's not it's going to take a lot of our time and energy in baking, frankly.
Now, if you like to do bake sales, that might not be the case with other people. But
Right.
when you're running an organization, like I don't have time to organize a bake sale.
Right. We needed a higher impact
Yeah.
way to raise money than the bake sale that was at least conceptually in my mind.
Yeah.
Being
That's
able to
good.
focus on high impact tasks in your day that really do make a bigger difference in your work.
Yeah. Now, like, we just talked about the Eisenhower matrix. We're talking about the Pareto principle. Like, do you go through your day thinking about these models, like, and thinking like, let me run this through the Eisenhower matrix. Let me think about like what's the most impactful thing, like, or you just kind of you got into a point where you just kind of do it by habit.
I, I both at times. I real like you were talking about with processes earlier. I think you try to make these kind of decisions for your
Mhm.
work and then step back and just let it run.
Gotcha.
I'll give you two examples from my own work as a therapist, as a counselor who also runs the business. The first one was that seeing clients was is urgent and important. I need to be able to see clients, but I also needed to be home at certain times to see my kids. And so seeing my kids at some point became an urgent and important task also. So now we go to the Pareto principle and I recognize that at that phase of my kid's life, it was probably a higher impact task to be home
Hmm.
for those evening hours rather than seeing clients.
Yeah, that's good.
Both are urgent and important, but one was a little bit higher impact. A
So we,
second a second version of this though is that in my own practice of seeing clients, if I just schedule all of my week seeing clients, then I don't have the time or energy to A, run the business, B, write, C, podcast with you, coach, teach, all those other things that I want to do too.
yeah.
But seeing clients is still a really important and impactful task that I do, activity that I do.
You just said something, and we talked about this, I think, in the first episode about like like why would you need a coach? You said something that made me think about this. That to me, I think is really important to capture is this transition, right? Like at this time of my life, this was impactful.
Mm,
It still is impactful today, but this was more impactful. Like having someone to help think through that's a large part of the coaching that the coach that I have today helps me think about those things. Like, where should I be spending my time? Where am I going to get the biggest bang for my buck?
yeah.
Am I focusing on the right things? So particularly those times of transitions are really important.
Yeah, I love that. I love that and it assumes that what you're doing is probably the right thing, but it may not be the most impactful thing right now. Maybe at this
Yeah.
season of your life, you need to make an adjustment. The last thing that I want to hit on for this mental model framework area is, and I've heard you say this a lot recently, is the approach known as the one thing approach. What is okay? I got a half a day right now. I'm sitting at my desk, 4 hours.
Hmm.
Got a to do list that's 17 pages long.
Yeah. At least it
What
never gets
is
shorter.
what is the one thing?
Yeah.
What's the most important thing I can use this time for? And really hone down the list to just pick something that's important, that's high value, that's urgent and important, and focus on that. You've been using this, haven't you?
Yeah. So what I was going to say was, I typically will do something more formal, like the Eisenhower. I never really do the Eisenhower matrix nor the Pareto principle, but like I'll do like these more formal times of like, okay, where should I be spending my time when I start to feel overwhelmed? When I start to feel a little out of control, I'll stop and say, okay, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me write everything down that needs to get done.
Yeah.
And then what I'll do is, okay, I'm going to go home tonight and I don't want to think about work. So what are the most important things I need to get done to where I won't think about work?
Yeah.
right? Because you
Yeah.
always go home like, oh, if I would have just done that, and then you're like,
What if I
I don't
cleared
even know what I
this off my
did.
schedule?
Yeah. So I guess that's
Yeah.
what you're talking about. In fact, on my whiteboard, I have listed actually on my whiteboard. I'll walk up there and I'll write. I see you can't see it, Matt, because it's in my office. I see you looking to your right, to my right in my office on my side of the screen. Now,
Yeah.
I have written, and it's usually like a client name, right? Like I gotta get something to this client,
Right.
right, before the end of the day. And if I go home, I can't go home until that gets done.
Urgent and important.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I love what you're talking about there, and some things that are on my list are things I want to do and would be interesting to do, things that have to be done this week or sometime in the next week, but aren't the one thing I need to be doing today. And if
yeah.
I just did this one thing, it would relieve pressure, it would clear up my mind, it would allow me to sleep better.
And
So
then you
what's
can
that?
knock out 3 of your 17 pages of to-do lists,
That's right. That
right?
would be my one thing.
Yeah, one thing is to clear. Sometimes my one thing literally is I'm gonna spend 30 minutes
Mhm.
and clean up my email.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna address any of my emails. I'm gonna organize my emails. So like, okay, I might have like 150, like right now, like I got like 120 emails in my inbox, and I know 50% of them are just to let me know something, and I don't want to clear them because I need to like capture it somewhere else. So like, let me just spend 30 minutes and capture all these things and then pull out the things that are urgent that have gotten lost.
Yeah.
So that's often my one thing is like I need to bring some organization to my tasks so I can figure out what needs to get done, what doesn't need to get done because
Mhm.
it stresses me out to drop the ball on something.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes my first one thing is, okay, let me look at my to-do list and pick and
Yeah.
sort it into priorities and pick the things that I can do in this time. I have the resources, the energy, and the time for that are going to be most impactful.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's my first one thing.
Yeah. I'll start my
So
day off like that sometimes.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great way to start your day is what do I need to accomplish today? So working smarter doesn't just mean working harder or working even more efficiently, although that's an important part of it. It's also about sustainability. What can you keep doing? What
Mm.
can you keep doing? So if you like all of us are really serious about productivity and success, then we have to find processes that are sustainable. And part of that is accountability and progress tracking. We're going to get to that in a future conversation. So that's what we're going to tackle coming up. Stick with us though, and we'll break down how we can stay on track and keep going and keep growing without wearing ourselves out.
Yeah. And I'm going to leave with this one thought. We're talking about like listing the one thing that I need to do. Try the negative of that. What are 3 things that I don't need to do?
Mm.
So okay, if you want some additional reflection questions, you'll in the show notes wherever you're listening or watching to this, there'll be a link to some additional reflection questions um, on this topic. We look forward to you coming back and listening to some more. Thanks for taking time. If you find this helpful, please follow the show wherever you're listening. And if you think someone else would find it helpful, please forward it on to them. Y'all take care.